Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the long-awaited return episode. We had so many fan requests to come back here, and today we're finally doing it. Today, we are talking about the college admissions process. I'm Shawn Levine, of course, joined by Jake Birkhead, Tommy McGinn, and Matty Berger. So, guys, the college admissions process. I think we've all applied to college at this point. I would hope that we've all applied to college at this point if we're planning on going. We've been hearing back. A lot of people are making the decisions.
Yeah, Shawn, you're totally right. I mean, you have like parents and stuff that, who've maybe gone through the process before, or siblings and whatnot, and they claim like they kind of know it all, but in reality, it's a completely different system. The level of difficulty is immensely different. It's actually like definitely increased a lot, and it's just not what you see as previous years.
Yeah, I mean, especially with the Common App now, people are just applying to just more and more colleges. Like, I think my counselor recommended like 6 to 12 schools is like a good number of colleges, but I think a lot of people went way over.
Yeah.
I know kids who applied to like 24 schools.
It's actually absurd.
So I mean, with all these, and I mean, there's nothing wrong with wanting a lot of choices. I get. So I'm not trying to trash on that at all, but it just, with that, it makes it like a lot harder as more and more people are going for the same spots.
Actually, I agree in a sense, but I also disagree, because realistically, one thing I realized is at the beginning I was like, oh, let me apply to 20 colleges, but then you realize like you're not actually going to go to like, you probably consider like 5 of them realistically, and that's kind of the essence of the problem is, you have so many more applicants for the same number of spots in a school, university, whatnot, and that just makes the level of difficulty so much greater.
It's just so easy to apply nowadays. You fill out a couple things on the Common App. Some schools ask for supplemental essays, but like you can pretty much send the same application to every school. You just click the school you want to send it to. It's just so easy nowadays.
Yeah, I think just the ease of how to apply just makes people, I know multiple people who have applied to high 20s, low 30s, and it's really like, I think the main problem with it all is not enough people researching the colleges they're applying to before applying. So they really just apply to whatever they think looks good. And that kind of just increases the numbers. And the more people that apply and they keep the same student body number, then that just lowers the acceptance rate and kind of makes it almost impossible for everyone, especially at the top schools.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was definitely guilty of this myself. I know there was a couple of colleges that I applied to, and when I heard back, I was accepted, but I was like, I realized, like, after I, like, got it, like, I didn't really want to go. I had no intention of really ever going there. So I think that's a good point. Like, really make sure you research and, like, kind of, like, take your time deciding on, like, you shouldn't apply to a school that it's not even really in the running. Like, you should only apply to spots you could really consider yourself going to.
No, absolutely, I agree. I mean, another way, we're going to try to give advice here, and one of the pieces of advice I would give is, really research the school and show designated interest, because not only will you'll be showing the college, like, yeah, I would actually go here, but you're also going to see, like, is this a school I actually see myself in? Go to a tour. Even if you're not sure a ton about the school, just go, and it'll show you more than if you hadn't gone.
Yeah, and even if it's like far away and you can't schedule it, especially nowadays online, like do a virtual tour. There's a lot of times there's like info sessions online, or like live info sessions where like counselors or admissions officers from the school like talk about a lot of things. So I think you definitely like don't just like, oh, that's a good school, let me apply there. Like, you should know at least a good amount about the school before you apply.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think another piece of advice I would say is make sure you have good safeties. There's a lot of target schools, there was target schools that I thought were target schools for me, and they didn't go so great. It just, it's you never really know, and you don't want to take any chances. So make sure you have safety schools but not just like safety schools like, oh, okay, that's easy, I think I can get in there. Like, schools that you'd be excited about going to. Because you don't, even if everything doesn't go the way you want, you still want to be excited about where you want to go to school.
Yeah, I really just think every school on there should be a school you're genuinely excited about, even the safeties. And it should really, like, if you only apply to schools you're genuinely interested in, they will show as you're applying, and the colleges will see that you're interested in them, and that'll increase your chances by a lot. So I think my personal opinion is it's better to actually thoroughly apply to like a few, maybe like 10, rather than kind of blanket apply to like 30.
That's actually, yeah, that's great. I mean, one thing I was kind of thinking about as we were talking about this is what I did at the beginning of the process. And I remember I didn't really know anything at all. And so I kind of just looked up colleges on Naviance and looked at the scattergrams, if you will. And I now that I've know more about how it all works, those are not really a good judgment of whether you'll get in or not. I mean, they're like it's very broad and it'll tell you kind of what range you're in, but you can't just go off the scattergram and be like, oh, if I'm above the average, I'll get in, because there's so many different factors. Like maybe your admissions counselor is in a bad mood, or there's so much luck involved and whatnot.
Especially since nowadays everything I feel like has shifted as more people apply. You're getting more competitive applicant pools. I feel like even the average, if you could take it as that, like you're above or below average, I feel like the average is shifting up nowadays. And I don't think the scattergrams really reflect that yet. So you just got to be careful.
I mean, yeah, think about all the different parts of your application, like the essays, extracurricular activities, supplement essays. That doesn't show up in the scattergram. It's just GPA and SAT score, and a lot of kids are applying test optional now. So, a lot of times really you're only looking for the GPA. So, like, that doesn't really tell you much. So, it's you just got to, make sure that, again, you're really, you have schools that are safeties and that you're really excited about going to.
Yeah, just kind of on the scattergram again, you never know, kind of like what Jake was saying, you never know what the people have besides their GPA. Like, I know if it's super low, they could, have committed as an athlete or being, a world-class musician. You really just never know, and you can't compare yourself to a scattergram.
Do people want to talk about, early decision? Because I remember, the sort of frenzy around, early action, early decision applications that were happening earlier this year.
I mean, I think one thing I definitely saw this year is how important early decision can be if that's something you choose to do. It dramatically can increase your chances. And I mean, I just did some research, and some schools will 33 or sometimes even near 50% of their class they admit is from early decision. It just gives you such a such a advantage to people if you say you didn't do early decision.
Yeah, ED is really crucial. If you know you want to go to school and you can financially afford it, I would advise to ED. I know at the school I ED'd to, it tripled my chances, so it's definitely worth it.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point as well, though, is the financial side of it. I mean, college is expensive, and unfortunately the price is only going upwards, so I mean, you always want to go get the best education possible, but I think that's a good point. If you're really scared or you don't think you can afford all the debt, early decision isn't always the best chance. And I think early action is a good idea as well, because I think what I learned this year is waiting for regular decision doesn't really help you as much. Everyone's already applied early. They've already let in so many kids. There's only so many spots each college has. So I think you really want to get on top of it and try to apply as early as possible.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. I mean, it seems like you have a better odds of winning the lottery than getting admitted from regular decision at this point. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
I didn't even open my Common App account until after November 1st, so I was a little late to the early decision train, but
No, but that's another point I want to add on is, I feel like parents and a lot of people that went through the process before kind of oh, you have the same odds if you do EA than you do RD, and I just feel like that's not true anymore. I feel like colleges get to a point where they see they over-admitted an EA, and they're kind of we can't really accept as many kids, that's why you're not getting the same proportion of acceptances in RD.
Yeah, I think another thing to kind of help your application is I think some people kind of especially for extracurriculars, they kind of stat pad, if you will. They just try and do a bunch of stuff. But I think it's a better idea to do a few things that you're kind of more passionate about, but go farther with them, because that'll look a lot better. And also no one in a club likes the kid who just shows up I don't know, once a month or something, and then they just leave. And then after I remember after November 1st, I went to a club meeting for something, and it was practically empty. Yeah. Everyone was oh, my application's in. Oh, I don't need to care about this anymore. So I think it's a much better idea to kind of focus on less things that you're more passionate about, I guess.
Bring on a great point there. I kind of want to ask a question to everyone is, what is your opinion on senior sliding? Because in my experience, I don't really see it happening. I mean, a lot of math classes, I feel like they've gotten even harder ever since, like, midterms and whatnot, and I just don't really see how people can senior slide that much. I don't understand it.
Yeah, so I'm kind of in the same boat as you, but I see a lot of seniors sliding, but just the classes are getting harder, so I think there's a little disconnect between the difficulty and how much the students want to put in at this point. And it's a little tough, me personally, having like motivation as much as I did before all this. But you really just gotta keep going until you're actually done getting the diploma, and I think you just gotta keep pushing.
Yeah, it's really important to finish strong. We had a physics test about 3 weeks ago. I was kind of in the mindset of, I still studied a little bit, but I was kind of in the mindset of, I don't need to go super hard for this. And I took the test, and it was a disaster. And when I was handing it back to my teacher, I said, this was a wake-up call. So I had to, go back and work, and I met with him after school, and I did a lot better on the last one. So it kind of it was sort of a reality check for me, and I think this is a good example of, it's not over till it's over. If you can really, as good as you've been for 3.5 years of school, if you really tank that last half, the 3.5 years won't do anything for you.
That's kind of something similar as I went into senior year kind of thinking, everyone thinks senior year is going to be easy. That first semester of senior year is hard. It is not easy at all. The first
semester of senior year is the hardest.
I totally agree.
I agree with that. A lot of people think junior year is the hardest. I think senior first semester was the hardest by far.
The first semester senior year is basically just the work you do junior year plus applying to colleges.
Yep.
It's like a part-time job you're partaking in.
Basically.
Yeah, you throw on like jobs and athletics as well. It's a very hectic time. I don't know. A lot of people are struggle. Even to see friends, it's even a struggle because everyone's so busy.
So another thing that I wanted to bring up, I talked about this very briefly earlier, but you need to start on this stuff early. Like I said, I didn't even open my Common App until way later than I should have. And people were already talking, oh, yeah, I've already got my essays going and stuff like that. I literally had not even looked at any of these colleges yet. And that was a pretty big mistake because it puts a lot of pressure on you to get things in, even for a regular decision, which is usually a more chill, January, February deadline. I think you all started doing your stuff earlier, right? And I think you guys applied to more schools than me, so you probably have more supplemental essays if you guys want to talk about that.
Yeah, I think I honestly started late as well. I started earlier than you did, Sean, but I think the supplemental essays, especially for the November 1st deadline, that was a struggle. I can't remember which holiday it was, but we had a 3-day weekend once, and I got home from school on Friday, and I locked myself in the house.
I actually remember that. You talked about that.
Yeah, people were texting, oh, let's play some football. I looked outside. It was beautiful, 60 degrees. And I was like, oh, my God. I just stared right back at my computer. It was crunch time. I had 14 days left, and I literally spent 72 hours just writing supplement essays. Sleep, obviously. But besides that, I just locked myself in my room, and it was awful. It was an awful experience, but it had to get done. So I think that just kind of shows, start early, I guess. Make sure, you should, no supplement essay should ever be easy. You should always have, pre-writing, plan and attack it. You should never, just say, oh, I'm just going to whip this one out real quickly. You have to, look at almost, each sup essay as, almost as your college essay, as important as it is, because you want to make sure you get your point across to the school you want to go every single time you have a chance. So I guess, make sure you, have the time and, structure it all out. You don't want to just start writing to write. You want to, have, ideas in your mind before you go in.
Yeah, definitely. You want to get ahead, and you want to... I advise you probably should do your essay in summer. People say that, and then you're you don't actually do it, but you really should if you just commit to it. It will help you so much. The supplementals obviously take an insane amount of time. I think those were harder than your actual main essay, in my opinion.
I'd agree.
But it's not only about the time, it's actually the content you're writing. It is so important to differentiate yourself and actually have something that stands out, because that can really impact your admission decision. Because, I mean, think about it. These college admissions officers are reading sometimes even like 50,000 applications, and, you know, they don't want to hear about everyone's, maybe if they sprain their ankle in the basketball season. Like, I feel like that's a very common one. Like, you want to have something that actually shows your personality and, like, who you are as a person.
Yeah, and kind of speaking on that, a good thing my English teacher told me is, like you said, you know, these admissions officers, they read, like, I was just at a college the other week, and they said we read 48,000,
Yeah.
and we read them all, but, like, at the same time, you know, it's 48,000, so what you have to do is, it's really important to start everything with, like, kind of like a hook, you know, get them engaged, because if you start off your essay with, like, I went to the store, blah, 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 it's, like, just really boring. They're just kind of be glazing over it and, like, oh, okay. You know, their eyes are going to be glazed, I guess. So, like, they're not really going to be they're not going to really care about it. And then they might just, like, you know, say, oh, okay, that kid's, like, fine. Maybe, even if you have, like, a good GPA, if you don't, like, kind of get their attention, you know, you never really know. So you want to do everything you possibly can.
Yeah, basically. So how I looked at my essays was just be unique. I mean, some of the big schools read 100,000 applications even. And everyone has a good GPA. Everyone has an SAT score that can compare with yours. But really, the essay is how you actually differentiate yourself. So you don't want to do experiences that, like, everyone can have.
Yeah.
You really just want to do something that's unique and also yourself, because you really want to show who you are. And then in terms of timeline, if you're a junior, I would start looking at colleges right now and, like, really getting your list almost, like, created and going to even visit some of them maybe, and really just narrow down what you want in a college. And then also I'd try and start Common App as soon as possible,
Yeah,
because that thing
do that.
took me like 15 revisions.
Yeah. Like you said, juniors, I would definitely recommend going out and looking at looking at colleges, like, during your junior year, because you want to start. You don't need to have, like, your final list or anything, but you want to start, like, even just feeling out what you want from a school. Like, do you want a small school? Do you want a big school? Do you want to be near a city? Do you want to not be near a city? It's just, like, stuff like that, like, you can't really get that from just, like, a short visit to a college, but you just want to see, like, what you think you might be into, because you're going to be spending 4 years at this place. So,
Yeah, and I think another thing is even, like, kind of looking, especially, like, if you start, like, junior year, the more you, like, look at colleges, I found personally, the more you are motivated for school. I think I started really looking at colleges, like, late junior year.
Yeah.
So it didn't help me as much junior year, but, like, senior year, I was like, okay, to get into this place, I need this GPA, which means I need to attack this grade, make sure I have all my classes, like, I need this exact grade. And I think it kind of pushed you to go extra hard, I guess, like, because, like, I don't know, because I think the more I guess you realize, like, how much each grade matters.
Yeah.
It, like, to get into certain colleges, like, the more you'll push yourself.
I just remember how stressful junior year was. I mean, we talked about how senior year's first semester was probably the hardest. I mean, junior year was just absolutely terrible. I mean, the amount of stress you have it's awful. I mean, parents obviously will have pressure on you, and, you know, if there's any parents out there or students who, like, cut yourself some slack. It's really difficult, and, you know, if you do the best you can, that's all you can do.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, if you don't get into the best college, like, that's okay, you know, as long if you have a good list and you're excited about all the spots you want to go to, you know, I mean, you're gonna find your way. I mean, I've heard a lot of stories about kids who they ED'd somewhere, they were devastated, they didn't get in, they go to this other safety or maybe, like, even a state school, and not only do they have a great time, they're incredibly successful afterwards. Like, colleges will take you where you want to go. You know, you just have to trust the process, trust yourself. Obviously, you got to work. You got to work really hard. If you don't work hard, obviously you're not going to put yourself in any good scenario. But, you know, I mean, it's not the end of the world, I guess, if you don't get into your top spot, especially with how hard it is nowadays.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
think talking about the state schools, I think a lot of schools that we used to consider, safeties, like a certain state school in Western Mass, have become like that school. Honestly, is becoming a reach for a lot of people nowadays. So many people are applying there.
I mean, especially if you're it really also depends not towards the school. Is you realize it also depends what major you're applying to. A lot of the schools you're applying towards that major in that specific school. I mean, I think a lot of the hard ones are like computer science, business. I mean, even like nursing, whatnot. I mean, there's so many difficult majors to get into. I mean, it's really not comparable, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like I know kids who are like borderline geniuses that had a tougher time because of their majors. So, I mean, there's just so many things to look at, and I think if you get anything out of this episode, it's that, like we said earlier, like the straight GPA test scores, I'm above it, I'm in. That's not a good mindset at all. There's just so many factors.
Yeah, I mean, I also want to touch a little bit upon, networking in a sense, because getting ahead is also getting a teacher recommendation and having a teacher you've connected with over the past years, and that just goes back to the essence of being an academic weapon and really striving to put your best foot forward and, talking to a teacher after class and actually have a good connection, because colleges will read your 2 to 3 teacher recommendations and they can see what kind of person you are. And it's also nerve-wracking because you can't see what the teacher is actually saying. So you need to kind of trust that they'll put a good word in for you if you really believe that.
Yeah, also just networking, I would try and talk to your admissions counselor. It's better if they know who you are. They don't just see you as they obviously see you as more than a paper when they look at your application, but if they actually know and have somewhat of a connection to you, they'll definitely look at you in a more personal status. So try and connect, ask questions if you have them, and just reach out whenever you can.
Matty, for those who do not know how to do that, how would you suggest doing that?
So almost every college has your admissions counselor by region on their website. So if you go to the college, you can typically look up your admissions counselor, and then I would shoot them an email. A lot of them are really nice, will reach out, help you with whatever you need. I've met with a few. It just really helps build a connection. And also, they come to Westborough, so definitely do those when it comes out on Naviance, when the admissions counselors come.
That's a great piece of advice. I mean, the last thing I really want to touch upon is, the final part of the college admission process is finally deciding. Actually, I feel like that's the hardest process of this all is, the majority of us aren't decided. I mean, there's so many different factors, whether it's the financials, whether the location. I mean, maybe you didn't get into your preferable choice. I mean, you really need to understand that it's a difficult process. There's a lot of competition involved, and, people will put you down at a lot of times and what decision you want to do, and you really just have to think, well, this is what I want to do, and it doesn't matter what other people think. It only matters between me, my parents, my family, really. So.
Oh yeah, definitely, I agree. Especially if I feel like it'd be even harder if you have 2 schools that you really liked and you were really looking at both of them and you were seriously considering both of them and you got into both of them. I didn't really have that, but I feel like having to make a decision like that would just be so difficult.
Yeah, I remember I applied. I think my last deadline was February 1st, and then 3 days later, I've been in the mindset of I gotta apply to this place. I should apply to this place. Apply to this place. Then 3 days later, I was like, oh man, I gotta decide between all these places. So I think that kind of goes back to our earlier point of don't just throw your application everywhere, because you don't want to come back and you have 2 months to decide between 20 schools. You're just not going to be able to do that. So I think it's kind of important to narrow it down, I guess, because I think that makes it easier to decide.
I recently committed to a school, and I was really kind of confused on what I was going to do. And my best piece of advice is go visit both schools, not just once, but multiple times. Make a pros and con list. Really try to see where you can see yourself in the future, being your most successful self, and ultimately that it will come down to a gut decision, and you just gotta stick with that. So.
Yeah, kind of agreeing with you, Tommy. I think really the most important parts when you're deciding between a final 2 or a final 3 is just where do you see yourself being your best self, and where do you think you'll grow the most? 'Cause I think really college, undergraduate at least, is where you truly just become yourself. Where you go isn't that important, and as long as you really just become your best self. So I think just consider that, and also obviously consider how good the academics are and like the connections they can get you there too.
All right. Are we ready for the live commitment from the O?
Jake, you seem like you really want to.
I'm gonna pass on that. I don't know about if anyone else wants to go or.
Yeah,
I think I'm gonna pass as well.
Yeah, yeah. Sean, would you like to go?
Yes, I'd like to officially announce my commitment to MIT, the Mississippi Institute of Technology.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Congrats.
You're
Great work,
welcome.
Sean.
All right. Well,
Also, good luck, AJ, next year.
yeah.
Fellow
yes.
Labio.
I think that about does it for us. Of course, good luck to our buddy AJ, fellow Labio member. It's gonna be a tough one, but I have faith in AJ.
You got it. You got it, bud.
We believe in you.
All right, so I think that about does it for us. Thank you very much for tuning into the O. I'm Shawn Levine,
I'm Jake Birkhead.
I'm Matty Berger.
And I'm Tommy McGinn.
signing off. Start talking about that. Just
Yeah, it's definitely a lot harder. Alright, hold on.
Bro, what just happened?
Bro, I
What?
swear someone like burped or something.
No, you're just.
My bad, my bad.
I just went,
I couldn't hear. Alright, hold on. My bad. I started off.